Monika, you are the co-founder and co-CEO of Enfuce, the leading European card as a service platform. And you guys just raised a massive 45 million Series C. And you are on your way to becoming the pan-European leader in this space. I know you from other webcasts and a bit through my friends. You know, you speak loud and clear. Yeah, and some of your accents even speak, you know, louder. So it's great to have you here. And one of your favorite topics is communications, and that's what we are going to get today. So let me just get your slides up, and you can be on your way.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm always surprised that someone still wants to listen to my stories, but it's of course a privilege to be able to talk about what we do at Enfuce and why we do it. And of course, communication is really the hardest thing ever, that we as human beings, we are good at many things, but understanding and communicating to each other, that's definitely been the biggest challenge and continue to be. So when everything evolves, when the company grows, when our customer relationships grows, we always see that we fail and we succeed, and it's always through communication. And yeah, so that's in short what I'm going to talk about, and a little bit about myself, because I play, at least to my own thinking, a pivotal part of what is Enfuce today. Hopefully not that much in the future, just because I really want to build a company that brings value and impact to the world and is in person dependent. And I have a great team of people working for us. So we are around 110 last time I checked, and growing. And of course, I have my yin, so my co-founder and co-CEO Denise. So we really the let's say dream team of at least getting what Enfuce is about to do become a reality. But let's and of course Denise is the more beautiful one in this picture, the younger one, and diba da ba da and all that stuff. So let's take to the next slide.
Go.
So I think, as I'm an old banker wanker myself, and actually before that I used to be a developer. So back in the last millennium, yes, I know I look beautiful and young. I'm 47 years young, a mother of 4. I used to be a developer, and then I jumped into the telco industry and lived the dot-com boom, which I see a little bit similarities to the fintech boom that we're having. So a lot of talk about a lot of stuff that people maybe not know that much about, but really want to be part of. And when we founded Enfuce back in 2016, never founded a startup, never founded a fintech company. We just wanted to found a company that enables the issuance of money to do payments faster, better, and globally scalable. So I mean, like, we want to be number one. And why do we want to be a number one? Well, because it matters in order to have an impact. So we've talked a lot about our vision, our mission, and definitely about the purpose, because purpose, it what makes us wake up in the morning. And that's what really drives us to do the things we do in a way that we can be proud of them. Because I do believe wholeheartedly that nobody wakes up in the morning and decides to do a shitty job, but then shit happens. And often it's about lack of communication, it's lack of clear processes, etc. So those are the things that we really need to make sure that we are really good at. So I'm going to talk a little bit about also our values and how they actually guide us in our daily life. So from my background, I've been part of building banks. I was part of building S-Bank, which is one of the biggest retail banks in Finland today. I had a good fortune of really being the test engineer. So I was responsible for the whole bank infrastructure. So I know a lot about payments from a technical perspective, setting up infrastructure, cloud, on-prem, etc., all those abbreviations. And then my co-founder Denise, she's done payments for her whole life and in banking. So really that combination, and then combining our other co-founders, where we came in with the compliance side, with the hardcore tech side, And together that was what Enfuce was becoming. So the how, but the why we exist is really to help our customers succeed. And our customers succeed when they can launch products and services that make them number one for their customers. So like banks, financial institutions, anywhere where payments are part of the everyday life, that's where Enfuce wants to be part. So we are an infrastructure enabler, and that's in short what we do. But I think one of our biggest, let's say, unique selling points is it's really the combination of tech. Tech, we are the best in the world, and it's not even a opinion, it's a fact. So in our Series C round, we had a lot of investors wanting to invest, which is a good thing. B round was much harder. And then also we had big companies wanting to buy us because we have the best tech in the world. But tech isn't enough. We have also the best people. And it's not enough with the people either. It's about the knowledge and the compliance, and then really to put it into the processes. So the four main pillars of Enfuce is really tech, processes, compliance, and above all, people. And why does that matter? It's because I'm going to talk a little bit about how do we measure success and where are we going. So, and as I said, please feel free to shoot any questions, but I think otherwise we can jump to the next slide. I remember I was sitting with Denise, my other co-founder, back in, I don't know when, long time ago. We've been working together for, I think, 15 years now. We were sitting at Nordic Business Forum listening to Jim Collins about BHAG, so big, hairy, audacious goals. And that really resonated to us. It's like, yeah, fuck it. If we talk about go big or go home. So really setting up massive goals, because if you set too small goals in the everyday life, when the opportunities arise, you will think too small. So when you think big and you have massive goals, you will start execution on them. And that's what we have done. So when we founded Enfuce, we wanted to be number one. We wanted to be best, fastest, and globally scalable. And with those things in mind, the only way to do it technically was to go public cloud. And that's why we were the first one in the world to put card payment processing and issuing in a public cloud. Not because cloud is cool. I don't like that kind of, I'm not very cool, but it was a necessity to actually achieve what we wanted to achieve. And also the first 2 years, we actually made more money than we spent and paid dividends. So again, starting a company, bootstrapped, working our asses off and doing shit that matter. So then we're like, okay, but BHAG, that sounds like a weird abbreviation. So what should we talk about? Like, what's the ultimate measure of becoming big enough that it matters? And then it was, yeah, let's do an initial public offering. So IPO, that's the target. And of course, me personally, and with Denise also, I like to envision what reaching that goal will see. So the mornings when I wake up and I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do this anymore, which is not that often. Then I remember like that feeling I want to have. So I want to be there ringing the bell. And it's not going to be in Helsinki. I want to be listed somewhere where there's a bit more maybe money going around. But in the end of the day, that's just a goal. And by having that goal will steer us on the path of doing things in the excellent manner, because you will never IPO if you don't have your shit together. So again, also that is important. And of course, entering the world of payments, we enter the world of regulation. And we talk a lot about regulatory compliance, and we are really open and transparent about the challenges and how we do things. Because personally, I do believe that the only reason why we still have so much fraud, human trafficking, and all that nasty stuff happening behind the scenes of payment is because there are just so poor ways of doing KYC. So knowing your customer. So the transportation of me as a physical being to the digital world is still very different. We are quite blessed in the Nordics for it to not suck that much. But still, as soon as you get out of the Nordics, it becomes a different ball game. And I think those are important. So in order to fight fraud, money laundering, terrorist financing, and bad stuff, we need to have audit trails on stuff. So who did what and why? And if you can't stand for the stuff that you do, then you shouldn't be doing it. So one thing that I talked about in the beginning of what we aren't very good at, and of course learning all the time, is communication. So in the beginning, very typical Finnish, hardcore tech, awesome processes, certification to the max, but we really didn't communicate to our customers what we do, nor to the prospect customers. So we had, again, the good fortune of having our first customer in ST1, who we launched the Apple Pay cards back in 2017. And that opened the door for people like, hey, wait a minute, what's this? Enfuce, what's that? Shouldn't it be Nets or Tietoevry or Wordline or any other of the, so to say, usual suspects? So that opened door and inbound started to come. Still, people had a hard time understanding what we do. And that's what we have now been focusing on, packaging. And I think that the Series C round is the testament that finally a year ago, we nailed it. So card as a service became something that people actually knew what we do. And by knowing that, they could actually approach us. Yeah, but I think let's go to the next slide unless we have any questions. So
there's one already, but I think this is about internal comms. So I think I'm going to wait with these questions for a little while, as I know what your presentation is like.
Okay, awesome. So then when we grow, in the beginning of time, when there was 5, when there was 5 of us, one on the mainland, Finland, me, and then my 4 other colleagues, co-founders in the island of Åland. So the Finnish Ibiza or whatever they keep telling themselves that it
That's
is.
pretty good.
Yeah. I try to avoid it unless it's summer. But anyway, so we decided that the company will be global. We decided to go big or go home. And that, of course, brought things that English, only language that we need to have, and everything needs to be built up in a way that it's remote work only. And that's how it started to grow. Of course, today, 110 plus people, 16 nationalities. We have offices in 5 different places, etc., and growing. That, and especially through COVID, that was really a good thing, that us going remote was business as usual. So in that sense, in hindsight, I'm really happy for that. Yes, we have, as I said, offices, but they are more now, as they were before, but more now than ever, places where people hook up for the face-to-face, etc. But in order to steer this ship, and when there was 5 of us, it was easy. We were calling each other and aligning, and like, the Finnish word that starts with a V and ends with another that I'm not supposed to be using. It was easy, like, mitä vittua, and then you started working through it. But now when we are so many, it's really important that everyone wakes up in the morning and knows what role they play, what is expected of them, and how can they help us reach the goals that we are set on. So we decided to implement objectives and key results, so OKRs. It's a framework. And having been part in many companies before, in management positions, been at strategic meetings, having these strategy maps and all that stuff, and like wondering what should we fill in and what to communicate, this was crystal clear. So this really, the pieces, like they fit, like the Poletti, so it went down and in the Pajazzo, and I was like, fuck, this is it, OKRs, that's the Enfuce way of communication. And last year we had 3 objectives and key results, of one which objective that our customers love and praise us. and then it was a little bit about growth and so forth. But we reached the customers loving and praising us. There were a lot of key results under it, but one main was NPS. So our NPS score last year was 95, and that's a bit concerning because it's much better than I ever hoped for.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that is amazing.
Yeah, but that talks about the commitment. It doesn't mean that everything goes easily. I mean, like, we work in a very complex payment world with a lot of big players that we need to combine everything. But we have the people, and with the way of being transparent and open and explaining and teaching and succeeding together, then that was achieved. So we're really proud of that as a company, because it takes everyone. You know, you are as good as your weakest link, and the weakest link is only weak because you as management fucked up on onboarding. So then those, of course, remain as important stuff. So it's not like, yes, now our customers loves and praises, fuck it, and let's now focus. So these are our this year's goals. So for us now, it's like our employees loves and praises. That's really important, because we understand that in order to grow and in order to reach the targets, it's important that we get the right type of people. We talk a lot about culture, handbook, and also cultural ad. And we have this thing called zero asshole policy, and it's written down. So again, like, you are not allowed to be an asshole. We don't tolerate assholism or whatever it's called, and we will intervene, because this has to be a place where we grow together, and that's important. So double everything was also like, how do we find a word where the growth that translates into numeric KPIs and etc. becomes, you know, easily understandable and becomes a mantra. Like, what are we going to do this year? We're going to fucking double everything. We're going to double everything. So we talk about customers loves and praises. Yeah, that's important. But now today, our employees loves and praises, and when they work for the same goals, we will double everything. So that's like, and the only thing we are not allowed to double, it's the amount of priority 1 incident. So that's kind of like the only reverse, but in general, that's like double everything. And then we talk a lot about our core values guiding us, and we're going to go in a bit into the core values. So this is a good donkey bridge, meaning sorry.
So Monika, before you go in there, we stay on internal comms and, you know, OKRs and these things. So we already had a question regarding how do you set goals, but I think you answered that. But talk a bit about the frequency and how do you do internal comms? I mean, do you do it, and who does it? Because I know you are very outspoken, but are there other people who take part in communicating things internally? And, you know, there was a point made here that internal comms usually suck. So how do you avoid that? Or do you also suck sometimes in internal comms?
I never, let's not go into that sucking discussion, but because it can go so wrong. But let me put it like this. Everyone is responsible for communication. So for example, last week, the whole company reached a big milestone, and it was epic, and it was probably once in a lifetime. So I took, since I'm from the north part of Sweden, actually, I'm born to Finnish parents in on the other side of the border. I took them to Levi. So we were really going through all of those communication and discussions. But yes, so I have a person who is responsible for our culture, leadership, and marketing, because that transcends to internal and external communication. So it's really important that, right, you know, we walk the talk. So that's how we do it. And there's a lot of cadence stuff that happens. So when it comes to objectives and key results on a company level, they are set on a yearly basis. And of course, they are steering us towards the IPO. So like, what needs to happen this year for us to be one step further to the IPO? And that's how it happened. And then the key results of each objective becomes the objective of the teams. So we have around 10 different teams. We have the factory, so the production and all of that, and that's split up in delivery teams and and 24/7 and so forth. And then we have the, sales, pre-sales, revenue ops, customer success management, marketing, etc. And then they take the key results. So they double everything. There are specific targets to reach on a monthly recurring revenue basis, on gross margin, etc. And then they need to look at, okay, out of these things, what can we impact together with whom? And then they put up their objectives and key results. And that's then followed through on a quarterly basis. And then the team managers who are there to make sure that they take away all the obstacles from our employees. They, of course, follow up on a weekly cadence. And we have a tool, for example, called 15.5 that we use today to get a pulse. So just understanding basic things about how people are feeling, giving high fives, etc. That's important, because when we systematically ask the same questions on a certain cadence, then you can start seeing like how things are going. Hope that answered the question.
Yeah, there was one a bit more detail asked, how frequently do you meet for these things? Meaning, I guess, how iteratively do you change things or adjust things?
Well, put it like this. Objectives on a high level, on this level, they don't change.
Right.
And we set them the first time, so they never change, but the key results change. So like here we had double everything. And when me and Denise were like, yeah, because for us, we see the world in a certain view, we were like, yeah, but that means in 170 people. And we understood that 170 people isn't a key result itself. But when we start, backlogging the cost and blah, 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 and then we're like, shit, no, that's going to steer so wrong, because people are like, I'm going to hire 10, I'm going to hire 15. And it's like, you're not going to hire anyone unless you can tell me why. How will it help us to reach our goal? So that was then adjusted. But now, it takes often the first 2 months of the year to adjust the OKRs to be on a level that everyone understands them equally. And that's only through communication. So when we set the first objectives and key results, then the teams start talking about them. Like, what does it mean for us? And then we can see, like, is it going to the woods or is it going to the right direction?
Right.
And then of course the team key results, they are of course changed depending on what they are supposed to achieve, because it also has to be time sensitive. Like, we need to do some things need to just happen in a certain order for it to become the end result. So the end result of the key results on the end of this year, that will then change and be tweaked, and that's on a higher level on a quarterly basis, but otherwise monthly and weekly. And of course, if needed, if it's like, fuck, that feels stupid, then everyone has the right and obligation to speak up. So since this is no social welfare company, everyone has the obligation to speak up. And when they speak up, we need to listen, and then together we understand it, and then we move forward and adjust accordingly. I think that's one of our key strengths. Is like, we have this saying with Denise in Swedish, like, gör om och gör rätt. So when things doesn't go like you planned, or you planned something good, you started execution and you saw that, shit, this isn't working. We don't go into a corner and start crying and sucking the thumb. We just conclude that, fuck, we sucked. And that's probably the sucking part. And then we readjust, realign, and move forward. So liike ei lopu koskaan. The forward moving motion never stops.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for that. That was good.
Yep. If no more questions, let's deep dive into our values.
So I'll switch the slide.
Yes, please.
Here.
Yes. So I've been part of companies before that have had values. I remember one company, we had values printed on a mug, because nobody would ever remember what they were. And I still remember the one that was the weirdest, tähtiä joukkuepelissä. It's like stars in a teamwork. And I thought, what the fuck does that mean? And then we were handed a book, and they was like, yeah, I don't understand it, but thanks for the mug. So in order to not have that happening again, we actually tried in another company before another way of working, where we like, okay, let's start have a dialogue. And when I was actually doing my executive MBA at Hanken some years ago, Kristina Dahlblom, who was a coach then, but now is a professor there and much younger than me, by the way, and smart as fuck. She was like, there is this way of saying that please list the 4 or 5 persons that you admire. You know, it can be your mother, your grandmother, Steve Jobs, whatever. Just start by listing them, and then list the things why you admire them for. And that's your values. So your inner values will come up by doing that exercise. So since we wanted to build a company that has a positive impact on the world, so the payments to purpose side, and we wanted to build a company where we can be ourselves. Like, I'm a bit different than Denise, but all in the good ways, and we were the yin and yang, and everyone is different. So we get the cultural ad. How do we then say what the zero asshole policy means? Well, if you are not working according to our values, you are not by default, but you could be kind of seen as a little bit of an asshole. So then we have a problem. So in order for us to be assholes, sometimes it happens, but like not constantly, we needed to understand the values that we want to work by. And when we did this exercise with the whole company back in those days, it's a long time ago, then we saw that 4 main themes come together. And then those themes were given names like think big, collaboration, excellence, and sustainability. And remember, this was in 2017. So this was much before, anything and everything around sustainability become the hype that it is now. So if I a little bit open up, for me, think big is to sell this awesomeness called Enfuce and impacting the world outside of Tellus. So I mean, if an alien comes in and says, hey, Monika, I need a card as a service, I'm like, yeah, you bet, here you have it. If you think big from our CTO, it's like, how do we build the best infrastructure globally that has the high availability in a way that we can protect from any kind of attacks? And then if you think about the developer developing the one API for create account, how do you build it in a way that the API can answer when 1 million accounts are created simultaneously instead of 3? That's think big at Enfuce. So like, don't box yourself in. You need to think, and that's why we talked about the IPO. So everyone understands that that's where we're going. So in your daily life, please don't do stuff too small. And then sometimes you need to do it, and that's fine if it's a decision that we take. Collaboration was easy. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, if I could have done Enfuce by myself, I would. I often joke that I don't like people, but I'm so past the time where I want to be anyone's manager. So I like getting things done. I like, doing things with smart people. But in order to reach big goals, you need to do it through collaboration. And when we launched Enfuce back in the days, it was us, and we have 4 stock listed companies as our subcontractors back in those days. So again, collaboration, if you want to do big ass things, you need to know how to collaborate. And that also means now when we're growing, so with customers, partners, prospects, it's really important. So for us, that's one of our core values.
So Monika, let me interject you there, because I wrote a question. I think this is something that companies run into very often, and I know at least the AVS story from your other webinar that you participated. But how do you make sure, or how do you communicate? How do you sell this collaboration to your customers? So and partners, I mean, and how do you remove roadblocks? So I mean, if you collaborate, there is either one person or there is an investment that needs to be made, or there's a critical line in a project that there's a roadblock. So how do you or your team, view roadblocks?
Yeah, I would say like this: in order to understand if there are roadblocks, you need to know what the success looks like. So whether it be in partnerships or project or customers, if there is no win-win, there is no collaboration. And we always say that we are not a service provider or tech provider to our customers. We are their partner. So we go in, whether it be our customer or whether it be a partner like AWS, and understand how does success look? Why would they want to work with us? And why would we want to work with them? And when you talk about that before you start the actual work, it will become easier. I'm not saying it's easy, and then you have the scope. So then you can always revert back, like when the obstacle comes, that sometimes for some people can feel like, the biggest thing in the world because they are focused on only that. Then you're like, yeah, but now, chop, why? Start with why. Why are we doing this? What are we here to achieve? How can we make this happen? I think that's also important when we think about who we partner up with and who we hire to Enfuce. So it's important that you have, let's say, glass half full mindset. It doesn't have to be or every day, but if you come to a room and you only see problems and you can't start thinking about solutions, then this is not the place. Yes, you need to come and you need to see the problems, but you need to find ways to overcome them. So that's really important from a collaboration. So it's actually about who do we collaborate. We don't collaborate with everyone or anyone because it's not a fit. So it has to be a fit. So there has to be a win-win.
Yeah, and I think it ties into your no assholes,
yes,
culture, because if we are not assholes, we tend to collaborate and strive for win-wins.
Yes, definitely. And also we have had some situations where we have said no, thank you, because it's been assholeism on a higher level even. So we just see that it's not worth it. When the world is full of possibilities, why would you focus on something that you know from the get-go that there is not a clear understanding of win-win? It's waste. And we need to minimize waste and maximize focus in order to really hit where we are going. And I think that's where the excellence comes in. So excellence for us, it's not about wanking the dot or how you say it in English, but it's really about, we do regulatory stuff. So we need to do things through the process. The times that we have had, let's say, technical issues or some errors or whatever, it's always someone has deviated from the process. And processes, structure makes us really fast. And I'll give you an example. When I was at a bank, CIO, and I wanted to issue a new card product, it would take me 2 years approximately. And if you look at Apple Pay or Google Pay, launched now by OP, they were wanting to do that already in 2017. And last time I looked is 2022. And it's because if you don't know what you're doing and your partner maybe isn't the best fit for you, then it will take time. And what we did as a normal day, it takes 3-4 months. But if we can control and help, and the customer says, hey, this is my business thing I want to get done, please help me. We have done it in 2.5 days. And I have always said, I don't know why it takes so long. It should take 5 minutes. But that's again, like, how do we do it? But it has to be excellence because we're talking about people's money. And that's really important. And that's why we have also, of course, the 4 right principles and code reviews and all that stuff, so that we don't put shit into production, because that's often costs a lot of money and time to fix. When it comes to sustainability.
So let me put you back again to excellence. So there's one question regarding working remotely, but let's bundle my point into this too. So when you talk about excellence, and on your website you say that you want your employees to make sure that you exceed the customer expectations. So let's put this into two parts. How far are you willing to let your employees to go to, for instance, make that card issuing faster, or to make that customer happier, to exceed the expectations? Because there's a cost involved, right? And then there are other customers too that need to be served, and you only have this many customers. And then have you had on this excellence issue, if you have a lot of process, you have a lot of compliance needs. When we work remotely, at least I presume that during COVID you guys work remotely, you have a large team. How did you make sure that everybody gets how these things are done? So where the inefficiencies on this point, that some people are working more excellently than others because they can't be onboarded or because of remote work. So I don't know if you got those 2 points. So issues with remote work, and the other one is how far do you let people go to exceed customer expectations?
Yeah, okay, I'll try to remember those both, but like put it like this. Exceeding customer expectations is often when you deliver something fast and to the point. So in order to do that better and faster, automation is really the key. And in order to automate something, we have the whole value of testing. So in order to do the pipeline, so we don't deploy anything into, we have this principle, doesn't always for all the things go through, but the zero touch production. So everything is put through pipelines, which means that the pipelines are there to test and try and take out the shit, so to say. And then when we put it into production, it is there and it lives on and it scales. And we have this auto-healing components also for the whole infrastructure. So what we say is that our employees, as a single individual, they are allowed to make any decision they need as long as it only impacts them. And then if it impacts their team, then they can do that decision together in the team. And if it impacts more of the company, then it has to be lifted up to a certain team that will decide upon it. And then they will go into execution mode again, because that's the only way to give autonomy and responsibility, ownership, in a way that we know still that people understand what it is to do it in the right way. And then, of course, when we talk about transparency and collaboration, exceeding customer expectations is also often actually when we say to them, no, you shouldn't do it like this. So it's not that we say what the customer wants to hear. We are experts in payments. We've done it for a long time. We tell them like, okay, but what do you want to achieve? Fine, this is what you should do. I still get a lot of the old school RFPs, request for proposal, where some consultant has done 195 questions, some random tech, or how do you calculate interest on the account, or how do you send an invoice, or shit like that. And that's so wrong, because it's about, okay, but what do you want to achieve? And by having that, we can then make sure that a single individual don't do shit but get shit done. And then how do we manage it, like through COVID and remote onboarding? We have like really good onboarding. I mean, like seriously good onboarding. So we have that from day one, not because we wanted to, but because we had to. Because when you do PCI DSS, so payment card industry data security standard that governs the issuance of credit cards and cards, is really strict. And there's a lot of things that you can't do, and evidence you need to produce, etc., etc. And then we understood that shit, we need to have evidence on a lot of things before people can start doing something. And in order for not to them to want to kill themselves during the onboarding, we need to start making the onboarding better and meaningful. So we put a lot of effort. So when you join Enfuce, you will have this 8-week onboarding, not like just sitting there, but certain things that need to happen in order for you to start functioning. And then you will start having that continuous, re-onboarding, or making sure that everyone understands and aligns. So that's important as well, and that's how we work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and then
I think
the 15.5 tool that we use for every Friday, people like put in the pulse and then give a little bit comments and stuff, and they know why it's there. So it's like people don't fill in stuff if they don't understand the purpose and what it's used for. That's why we talk a lot about why we do things.
Right. I love the example that you gave on the empowerment, and I guess that's part of onboarding. So making decisions that affect you, and then how to make decisions affecting the team. I think that's really, really great.
Yeah, me too, because we're awesome.
Yeah.
but of course it's a learning curve, and we're learning all the time. So I think that's also very important. And if we now jump to sustainability, yes. Sustainability. Well, for us, sustainability from the get-go was really like, okay, we want to build a company that we can be proud of. It will be here for a long time. It will take care of our employees, because I remember when we put out the first ad, and it was like massive, like shit. We are taking responsibility over other people, not just our own families and so forth. So that was sustainability in a nutshell. And then back in 2018, where we were looking into, but how could we walk the talk? So we talk about payment to purpose and all that stuff, but like, how do we actually make an impact? And that's how My Carbon Action was born. So our sustainability service, but that's kind of a spin-off of the idea of actually making a service feature from one of our core values. So that's what sustainability is. And if someone has more questions about this, I'll be happy to answer now. Otherwise, I think we'll deep dive a little bit more into the sustainability itself.
Please do. There are no questions on those. So yes.
Okay. So if you take the next slide.
1 second.
Yeah. Yes. So this is like, why does sustainability matter? And I have to say that, life is awesome in a way that if you want to, you can learn new stuff every day, sometimes more useful than other days. But I really like this bathtub analogy, and I was given this by Compensate's Niklas Kaskiala, their Chief Impact Officer, because we were talking about sustainability and looking into more from the climate change perspective. So before COVID hit, we could really see, and I was part of a new economic forum, and I realized, like, shit, we're really in trouble. I mean, like, this climate change is not a climate change, it's a climate crisis. We have problems. And being from the north part, I could also see, like, the winters are changing, all these kind of pesticides, and that's just in Finland. But what is happening in the other parts of the world? Like, if you go to Dubai and you go to Burj Khalifa and you look outside, you can see that there are not so many buildings anymore near shore, because the water levels will rise, and that will impact problems. So just the properties and the heating and cooling and all that stuff. And then it was like, okay, but hey, we need to do something. So what can we do to make an impact? And then Niklas, we were discussing, and said there are three things to fight climate change. First is to avoid emissions. The second is to reduce emissions. So like, here comes the avoiding. So if we think about the bathtub, the water is running, you need to turn it off. You need to turn it off. And then, like, shit, it's already full, so it's already running over. We need to reduce it. How do we, open the plug in the bottom and start letting it out? And then, if you can't do these two, you need to compensate, and compensate in projects that focuses on avoiding and reduction. And that's how, like, okay, I get it. Like, and then I was like, okay, well, what can we do? What can we do? And then me, Denise, and Niklas, our co-founder, we're sitting one day, and we're like, what could we actually do to that matter? What do we do today? We process payment data, and we process sensitive data. So we de facto have the result of payments. So when you pay, you consume, when you consume, you emit. And then like we are allowed to store and process that kind of data because that's our core business. And then if we take that, and then we started looking like, okay, but where do we find the science? And then we found a Finnish-German company called DMAT, who had done this 1.5 degree lifestyle. So like our lifestyle, an average Finn emits 9.7 tons of CO2 emissions a year. And then it's like, yeah, is that a lot or not? Yeah, it's a lot, because we should be down at 3 tons a year. And okay, where does the main part of the emissions come from? Well, it comes from how we live, what we eat, what we buy, and how we go from A to B. And that's where we're like, but shit, all that data we have, because we see where you paid, if you take a bus or if you bought at the gas station, etc. And that's how then My Carbon Action came to be. And My Carbon Action is really it's a value add feature on card as a service, but it's the embodiment of from payments to purpose. So we want to help our customers, banks, fintechs, merchants, to enable their customers, meaning us consumers, to lead a more sustainable life. And that's really important because, you know, time is running out, and it's going to be massive impact already in our lifetime. So if we thought that like it's our grandkids, no, it's us. So we need to do things that matter. So if you change the next slide.
So you can actually there show that we take real action when we use the card. We can see the carbon usage and our footprint right there.
Yeah, and we wanted really to put also in tips and insights. So it's not just about, it's not about blame game. It's about, okay, if I do this, what can I do next? Yeah, so this is like a short version about what we do. So card as a service, we try to picture it in Lego bricks. So it's everything from processing payment, the accounts, etc. And then you can have an app, and then you can have a plastic card, recycled or whatever. And then adding My Carbon Action to it, it will give you the insights of what you bought and what you paid. And it also takes into consideration your lifestyle and where you live, because it has also meaning in which country you live, because a lot of things when it comes to electricity, etc., are produced in different ways. So some do a lot of fossil fuels, some do more nuclear, etc. But that's in short what we do. Questions, and I'm gonna go and motivate my youngest one soon. So
yeah,
you can cut that out.
Let's see if I think it would just make it more interesting, but yeah, we can try. So I guess the floor is open now to people. If you want to pose questions, please do so. I'm going to ask my last question here, and that's related to the IPO. I mean, yes. So you have so many things going on yourself. I mean, just this last thing, that you are not just greenwashing, but you're actually making something that is actionable, people can follow. I think this will be loved in your equity story because it will relate to the ESG funds. But this is my question. So you are very open about all the competitive things that you do. I mean, I watched a couple of webinars, and I feel like I could do card as a service, but I don't think I could execute it. And I think that was your point. So you are very, very open. Why so? And you know, are you afraid of spilling some beans that your competitors will copy? And how do you view your open communications and kind of maintaining the competitive edge?
Yeah, well, I think about it maybe from a different angle. I think more about it. First of all, I always say that if I don't lie, I don't have to remember what I said. So anywhere and anytime, since I talk so much, it's easier to just be open and honest, because then I don't need to remember like, yeah, what did I say where? I do also believe strongly that, you know, there is no one winner in this game. So we are here. So anyone, like one of our competitors, you could say one day is GPS, and their CEO does awesome things also. And I know we are much better than them technically because I know the tech stack. But in the end of the day, there needs to be competition. You know, I like Usain Bolt. So if I want to be Usain Bolt, I need to have the competitors. Why would I otherwise, you know, get up in the morning? I also think that by being open and honest and being like we are, it also helps other prospect customers or prospect partners to understand what we do and when they get an idea. So my thinking is like this: we want to be number one. We can't be number one because we say we are number one. We will be number one when others say that we are number one. So if they don't know who we are, they can say that we're number one.
And I think in platform business, your openness helps you actually, because you tell so about the advantage you have and you're open about that. So you must have it. Otherwise you would be that liar.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And everything that would be embarrassing.
So Monika, it seems that, you know, people are upvoting this and it's already doubled there, but this is always I mean, not always, but sometimes we get at the end of the webinar, the question, you know, lessons learned. What would you do different if you would start over? So what's your biggest mistake, or what would you change? Anything there? Yes,
there is one thing that I would change, and that's actually, so I knew a lot, and we knew, I mean, like, this shit we know how to do it. We have done it for years, but funding was something we didn't know. And as we founded a company and not a fintech startup, you know, our first, like when we started scaling, and we started getting massive inbound, and we were like, shit, we're onto something. We need to start scaling faster. I went and took a bank loan. So our first 5 million euros of funding is actually from Lähitapiola and Nordea and Finnvera. And I like them all, really helpful. But, you know, at that point, we were doing plus, you know, black numbers, and we took in the money. And you get, when you take in money and the only collateral is the company, because we were already doing so well, and they were like, you know, this is where we're going, you get covenants.
Right.
Yeah. True. So, you know, yeah. And if you would care about them, you would probably need to do a lot of restricting, or then you're like me and say, hey, now we're going. So I think that's the only thing that depending on who you are and what you want, but if you want to scale globally, remember, there is an upfront investment, and knowing what I know now, I would have taken equity money there already, not debt financing. Yeah. But that's it. Otherwise, it's just been a fucking nightmare. No, just kidding.
Excellent. So we still have time. I'm gonna. This is absolutely last, and then we'll close. But this is a good question, because you corrected me on that too. You know. So I've worked in Germany, and there are some co-CEOs there, you know, one technical, one commercial. But with Denise, you are co-CEOs, and you are because you were so adamant toward me, you really are co-CEOs. So why is this the perfect model for you guys?
Well, of course, it is like, first of all, we built the company together. We run it every day together. And since there is a license entity of Enfuce, and there is a, you know, service entity of Enfuce, we are also legally CEOs of these two. So we are de facto, you know, CEOs both. Right. It's about like that. But then co-CEOs, that's what we are. So I wouldn't see myself as the N26 guys, maybe, because I don't know them. But in the end of the day, we're like yin and yang. So our execution and quality of decision is massive, because I have all the time on my fingertips a person who sees the world like I see it, the goals, but from a bit different color. So when we need to do a decision, we need to get facts and figures in, and we need to align, and we need to execute. It's not a very long process, because we've been doing this, like she calls me her work wifey, and so yeah, that's why it works for us. I don't know if it's for everyone, but I do know that everyone keeps telling that CEO position is a very lonely position. I wouldn't know, because I have never been a lonely CEO. because I'm not the title fantastic. I could be, you know, when we started Enfuce, I did anything and everything from cleaning to sales to whatever. But since I can have an opinion and execute it, that's why I'm also now the co-CEO.
Thank you, Monika. Thank you to the audience, and all the success to Enfuce, and also a bit of good luck. I mean, we all need it.
Of course, and that's what there has to be. The return on luck, it's about the enablement of grasping opportunities. So if you are lucky, but you are blind, and that has nothing to do with actual visuals, then you have a problem. But hey, thank you very much for having me, and everyone here, go and subscribe so we can see more awesome discussions in the future.
Thank you, Monika.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.